Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Squared Up release webinar, where we're going to be showing off our latest release, Squared Up 4.3. My name is Matthew Long, and I'm joined by John Shaw, our Chief Product Officer.
Hello there.
I'm going to be taking questions from you guys. So as always with our release webinars, if you've got questions throughout the webinar as we go along, feel free to put those into the chat, and myself, along with our engineering team, will answer those questions. Or if there's a really good discussion point there, I might interrupt John and get him to sort of answer that live on the webinar. If not, we'll cover this sort of Q&A at the end as well. So if you have questions, make sure you ask those. Otherwise, I'm going to hand over to John now, and he'll take us through all the exciting new stuff in this release.
Thank you, Matthew. I should maybe do a very quick introduction to myself. So I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Squared Up. I've been here a bit over 3 months now, so I still slightly have my training wheels on. This is my first one of these release webinars, and I'm very excited to be representing what the team has built in version 4.3 to you all today. I'm slightly nervous as well because one of the people who did a lot of the key work in this release is sitting opposite the table, which is Matthew. So I'll try not particularly to mess up his bits. All right. So before we kind of get into what's in 4.3, let's start with a sort of quick reminder of where this fits into the roadmap. I'll give a sort of PowerPoint introduction if you like, but I will then switch to actually demoing the code itself. The main features that are in there. We'll talk to you about how you can get hold of this exciting new version, and just to tempt you to stay with us right to the end. I do have quite an exciting little bit of news that I'm going to share.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, exciting. And then we will have time for Q&A as well. All right, so roadmap. The team has worked very hard over the last few years, culminating in a very big release, as many of you will know, with version 4 back in September of last year. In February, Richard showed you 4.1, and then again in April he showed you version 4.2, which brought enhanced perspective authoring, and now this brings us to version 4.3, which we'll go into the details of what's in that in just a moment. And this sort of continues the pattern we've been in. Now, I think last time we said every 2 months. I've changed it slightly. You may notice that it's very slightly more than 2 months between 4.2 and 4.3, but certainly we're on a pattern of every 2 to 3 months, and we expect to continue that sort of rate of delivery, of bringing you new features. And just to entice you with some of the things beyond 4.3 that we're thinking about, a ServiceNow tile that brings much more sort of out-of-the-box integration with ServiceNow, some deeper Azure integration, a dark theme. Ooh, what could that mean? Well, those are coming further in the roadmap. They're in the backlog. But today, what we want to talk about is version 4.3. And really, there's sort of 2 main themes. So there's 2 big themes that we've introduced in this new version. One is around improving big new capabilities and some, I think, very nice improvements on performance reporting, performance tiles. And the other is some enhancements in the area of discovery of applications, which are, again, pretty cool. So we'll start by kind of just summarizing what those features are. So the biggest one in the performance area is the introduction of a new tile. We call it the performance report tile. And there's 2 main things that it can do for you. One is that it can let you compare different metrics actually from different objects in the same graph. And we think the main sort of benefit of that, a number of you have asked us for this sort of capability over the last year or 2. The main benefit of that is to let you identify correlations between different metrics quickly and easily and visually. And then the other thing, actually, there's another sort of comparison, but now comparing the same metric with what it was over a previous time period. So, for example, what did it look like this time last week or last month, so that you can identify trends and maybe sudden deviations from what is the normal for a particular metric. So both of those things can be done for you by the performance report tile. But we've actually made a number of enhancements to the performance tiles themselves. So there's a number of nice little improvements there. And just to tease you slightly, I'm not going to tell you what they are. If you stick with me, you'll see them. But I think you will find them very useful. And then that's sort of the performance area. The other big area the other big theme for this release is around VADA, our application discovery, where we now let you discover Oracle databases, both on Windows and on Linux servers. And as many of you will know, if you're using load balancers, one of the challenges with discovering applications is that it's hard to discover, if not impossible to discover through load balancers. We have already added the ability to discover through F5, and in this new release, you can discover through probably the other two main load balancer types used out there, which is the Citrix NetScaler load balancer and then Kemp load balancers. You can discover through both of those. All right, so let's dig into first the performance report tile, and I'll give you one more slide before we switch over to demoing what's in it. So main benefits of the performance report tile. So it is a new tile. It's a new tile option under performance. So it's a new type of performance tile. So you can see it over there on the right-hand side, the little A versus B, to show that it lets you compare. And what it lets you do is add one or more layers into a performance chart. So the example there is actually showing two different metrics on the same chart. For example, each layer can have a different scope and a different metric on it. And each layer can also include a time comparison. So there's an example there. The time comparison is shown with a dotted line to show what it was in the previous period. Now, one thing that's a little interesting, you'll see when we switch to the demo here, is that this is the first time, because there's so much information that appears on these tiles, we, rather than doing all of the editing of the tile within the scope of the dashboard, we do actually pop you out into a new window to give a full screen where you can kind of live see the effects of the changes you're making without it becoming too busy. So that may panic you a little bit when that first happens, because it's an unfamiliar experience for those of you who are experienced Squared Up users. But that's the reason for it. And don't worry, we'll see in the demo we have handled how to make sure that you're keeping the changes and that they get published back to the dashboard. All right, so with that said, let's switch to demo mode. So this is going to show us our demo environment, so our preview environment for Squared Up. And what I want to show you first is how we might go about creating one of these performance report tiles. So if I start making a new dashboard, and then let's put in a performance report tile. So what we're going to do is hit on performance, and you'll see, remember that little A versus B. So this is the new tile that we've added. Okay, and immediately you'll see this thing saying configure report, and that's what I talked about. It's going to pop you out into a new window. So now we've got a full screen, so we can look at both the configuration panel on the left and what it's going to do for us on the right. So, and you'll notice there's this new concept called layer. So and we're going to add one or more layers into the same report. So just as an example, I'm going to pick one of our servers in our demo environment. It's a SQL server that has had a bit of a history of having a disk get full.
I know the one.
Yeah. And I'm not going to name any names as to who is responsible for this server, but it has had a little bit of a history. And so so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to focus this particularly on this server, and I happen to know that this thing has got, it's actually the only one we've got with a Z drive, and it's that Z drive that happens to be the one that has the problem. So I'm going to scope it on the Z drive, and I'm going to, this is all exactly as you would have seen on the previous performance tile. And I'm going to actually sort of monitor its free space, and you can see already there it is, just in the last last few hours, heading towards full. So I'm going to skip past this top N. You may be tempted by the top N, and you should be tempted. I'm going to come back and talk about that in a little bit. We don't need a top N in this case. There is just the one metric, just the one disk. And I'm not going to add a time comparison. We'll come back and talk about that later. Let me just name my layer just to be a good citizen, so that someone else coming later is going to see what on earth I've done. So this is the disk space layer. So we're done, and now we're going to add another layer to the same chart. So in this case, now I want to actually go and look at a couple of other metrics on that same server, because I want to see what is happening in terms of utilization of that server, So this one is the Sand SQL 01. I think it's wait a minute, I think it's that one. Let's hope it's that one. So we're going to look at that server. Then we're going to put in. Let's have a look at what its memory utilization is like. Well, actually, let's start with this. Go on, let's do it. So CPU utilization, since I happen to be there. So we'll add its CPU utilization. We'll look at the maximum of that, since we're interested in the spiking of it. And again, we're done. Oh, and again, I forgot to name my layer, so I'm going to go back and name that CPU. So you'll see now different metric, CPU utilization, compared with percentage disk space on the same chart. And we can keep going. We can just keep adding more layers. So I'm going to be good from the start this time, and we'll add memory. And again, we'll go in and look for that same SQL server. But now we're going to compare its memory utilization. So let's look at the memory percent used. And again, we can just hit done. We don't need to go through and do those other layers. So now we've got three metrics for the same thing compared on the same chart. And I mentioned, you see, while I've been doing all of this, it's set up here, unpublished changes. So it's reminding me that I haven't actually published everything I've been doing on here. And it's got back to dashboard. So if I go back to the dashboard now has remembered everything I did out on that tile editor and has dropped it into my tile actually in the context of the dashboard. And there it is. And actually, if you want to get a sense of why I was concerned about this about this server, there's the disk space. That's the dark line you can see here. And you can see it's had a little bit of a history of running out of space. So now we can at least see the thing is running. It is, it's using a fair amount of memory. The CPU's fairly relaxed. The disk does seem to be trending. Now, it looks like someone actually had a bit of a clear out a while back, but trending towards problem again. All right, so there we are, one performance report tile with three different metrics compared on the same thing. So if we continue editing, let's go in and have a look at maybe a different way you can use the performance report tile. So again, we'll go in, comparison, and this time let's have a look at maybe the time comparison. In this case, again, I'm going to pick a particular machine. So this particular machine is another one that I know is a little problematic. It's called WinHV01, and in this one, you'll see in a minute has tended to have some performance problems. If I and actually start, the full name of it starts PCT Win HV. I think we should find it. There it is. That's the one I'm concerned about. And in this case, the metric that I'm particularly concerned about is memory. So again, we'll look at the percent used memory. We'll add that in, and then I want to add another layer, which is going to look at the WinHV01's CPU. So let's find that same scope again, same machine. But this time let's give it a metric of CPU. And what I want to do this time is actually compare that with this time last week. So this time comparison now allows me to compare it with what it was looking like this time last week. And in fact, I may go in and do that again. I can go back and edit layers that I've worked on above. So I may go back in and actually do the same for the memory. Okay, so now 2 layers, both of them with a comparison with 7 days ago. And again, unpublished changes. I can go back to the dashboard. I can now see that again on my tile. You can see why I was concerned about this machine, because its memory seems to keep maxing out. And in fact, I can see if I compare with how that was, I can see actually it was doing the same thing this time a week ago. I can change the time frame here. I can look at it over the last 24 hours compared with a week ago, or even the last 7 days compared with a week ago. And again, you can see both the CPU, there's the CPU compared with a dotted line for the CPU a week ago. There's the memory compared with dotted line for the memory a week ago. Okay, so a couple of quick comments on these performance report tiles. One thing that you may have noticed is that I was tending to pick metrics that ran on a similar scale. So that's one sort of gotcha just to watch out for, is because we're plotting it on a single performance tile, everything gets plotted on the same scale. So if I picked something like, I don't know, available memory, and then compared it with percent CPU, the percent CPU would just run right along the bottom, because the scale would now go to a very large number. So a top tip is to limit this to things that are on a similar scale. Okay, so you could look at something like processor Q, which is going to be a small number, or you stick to percentages that are going to be in a similar kind of range. So that's sort of one comment. And then the other comment to be a little bit wary of is, you can see I was picking single objects. I mean, they can get very busy, these charts, if you're going to compare multiple objects. And that's kind of where I whizzed past it, but that's where maybe something like a top N feature might be kind of useful. So, and you'll notice it did say top N as I was whizzing past, but I want to sort of flip back to my presentation now and talk a little bit about enhancements that we've made to performance tiles in general. So we've talked about the new performance reporting tile, comparing metrics, comparing over time, really, really cool stuff. And you'll have noticed I talked about top N. There's also a couple of other things that I whizzed past. So there's actually, when you choose a metric, you can now choose a new resolution type, which is automatic. And so this change is not only in the new performance report tile, but we've put this into the current single metric performance tiles as well, so that you can benefit from this even on tiles you've already made. And what this does, it basically chooses an appropriate resolution based on the time frame, because it can be, if anyone's ever had a go at taking a tile with lots and lots of metrics on it that was done at the raw resolution and then changed the time frame to 3 months, or worse, had a user that's done that, it can take a while to populate. So this one we automatically choose for you an appropriate resolution based on the time frame the user's picking.
Yeah. Okay. So not only is it faster, you get a graph that's more sensible as well, right?
Well, right, yeah, because you can get, otherwise, particularly on spiky things, you can get a really, really noisy graph. I mean, even on that memory utilization, you started to see it, just be coloring in purple if you're not careful. So that's one improvement, but again, that's made across all of the performance tiles and not just the new performance report. The next one is top N. So again, you can do this both on the performance tile, on the existing performance tile, and on the new performance report. And what this lets you do is limit to a certain number of results, and then either put those in. They'll default to ascending, so smallest to largest, but you can flip it and do it from largest to smallest depending on what it is you're interested in. So that might be useful for something like, for example, if you want to look at disks that are all about to run out of space, which ones, I've got a lot of disks, which are the ones I need to care about that are running out of space, or it might be machines that are maxing on memory utilization or whatever. And then finally, you can also, within bar charts and spark lines, we used to just sort of present this long list of things to you. You can now actually choose the way in which these are ordered. So you can choose to sort them either by the value, biggest to smallest, smallest to biggest, or you can choose to sort them by the label. So you can get some more sort of sensible sort options on those. So those options are all available in the performance tiles as well in version 4.3. So why don't we have a quick look at that? I can get my demo environment back. All right, so maybe what I'll do here is make a little, instead of having these very wide tiles, let's squish them up a bit and make a bit of room to add a new tile over here. And just to show you that it's across the existing ones as well, I'll put in just an existing line graph so we can edit that actually within the context of the page. Come here, we go. Let's squish it down a little bit. So, for example, this, if we want to look at let's look at the top N. So if I want to scope something, for example, to all of my Windows servers, even in our demo environment, that does equate to a lot of servers. So prepare yourself for a little bit of a slowdown. If I want to look, for example, to the one that I mentioned, logical disks, so disk running out of space. So let's have a look at the disk space on all of those Windows servers that we've got. We'll take the time frame of the page, and you can see already what's going on is we're populating a very busy chart. So this is where the beautiful top N feature comes in. And we're going to select top N, and while it has a think about rendering, come on. Right. Let's go in and try this again. We have to wait a little while. Right. So this is just to illustrate to you the challenge, as many of you may have experienced, if you try and put. It was a brave and possibly foolish thing that I did to choose every Windows server, every disk on every Windows server. But we are going to limit the number of results displayed, and then it's going to.
There we go.
It takes it down to 10 is what it defaults to. I'm actually not even interested in 10. I want to take it down a little more. So it's all got an awful lot more performant now that we've reduced the number of lines we're trying to plot. And in this case, actually, ascending order is the right one, because what I've got is now the 5 disks that have the least space in them. So I want that's actually what I want. But of course, if I wanted something like memory utilization, I'd have flipped that and done descending order and then got the ones that are most maxing out. So this is our disk space, emptying disks performance tile.
Obviously, you can turn the label on there as well, so you can actually see which ones.
Oh, I forgot to. Yes, that's a really good idea. Why don't we do that now that it's super performant? We can do that. So let's show the legend in. We can actually see on a wall chart or whatever which are the ones that have actually got the running out disk space. Thank you, Matthew. Good point.
Yep. So that's immediately nicer than the top end bar, isn't it? Because not only can you see which ones are running out, you can also now see their history. Is it just sort of, it's at 5%, but it's been at 5% for the last 3 months. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Or is this thing crashing and burning?
Yeah.
It's kind of important to know.
Exactly. All right. So that's the top N, and then I'll show you quickly the sorting as well. So let's do maybe a bar chart. Now this had top N already in it. So let's do. Let's again. I'm going to tempt those demo guys. I don't care. I'm just going to do it. We'll do Windows servers again, and this time let's do let's do the logical disk in terms of 3 megabytes, and let's do the minimum on it. And now you'll see this new piece where we can actually sort it. It's defaulted to sorting by value. Okay, I could choose also, if I wanted to sort them by label if the name was more important. So that would just do that, sorting them by the name of the label. But I think value is probably more interesting in this context. So now I've got the top 10, bar chart of the top 10, or actually this should really be the bottom 10 most empty disks. Okay, so let's flip back to demo mode, because that's everything I wanted to show you. Back to PowerPoint mode, sorry. So that's everything I want to show you in terms of performance improvement. So I think an awful lot of new stuff that's gone in there. The new performance report tile, comparing metrics, and then a bunch of enhancements around, things like top N, sorting of bar charts. You could have done the same thing on spark lines, by the way. The same sorting is available there as well. And I want to move on to the second theme. So that was theme 1, performance. The second theme is discovery. So we've made a number of improvements in this release also to the VADA discovery features. So discovering through new load balancer types, and also discovering Oracle databases as well. So you can start building maps. If you can squint, you can see there's actually a Citrix load balancer and an Oracle database in there. a couple of notes on that in terms of finding Oracle databases on Windows or Linux servers. That does require the management pack, SCOM management pack from NICE, a company called NICE. We do provide links as to where to get these, both within the product and on the website. I'll show you that in a moment. Again, if we want to discover through Kemp load balancers, there's actually a couple of different management packs available on the community that will let you discover through Kemp load balancers. And then finally, discovering through Citrix NetScaler load balancers. There, the management pack is actually provided by Citrix. It's not the easiest to get hold of, but we do provide the instructions on how to do that. You may need to contact Citrix depending on what license you have with them. So, really cool stuff and stuff that I think becomes very powerful if you are using those load balancers or if you're making use of Oracle. I should also mention that we now have within the Squared Up product, we show you what our management pack dependencies are, and we'll highlight to you, in this example, we're highlighting that you don't have the management pack needed for Oracle if you want to discover those Oracle databases. So we show you within the product how to get them. So let's switch again to demo mode. We'll go back to my demo environment. And let's get into the enterprise application menu. And maybe what I'll do, this is again, those demo gods, let's tempt them. I'm going to try mapping a new application. So if we start building one out, it's going to typically build me this picture of web app and database, but I'm actually, because I'm going to start with, I know the first thing I've actually got is a load balancer. So I'm going to start in this particular application that I want to map. I know the starting point is a Kemp load balancer. So I'm going to try and find that Kemp load balancer. So this one is in our sandbox demo environment, and I'm hoping that this is going to find it for me. So it's this one, so Kemp Web it's called. So it's found, there we go, it's found our Kemp load balancer, and in fact we've discovered that Kemp load balancer is talking through to actually 3 web servers. So let's do some discovery on each of those. And the one that I'm interested in is this is our sales app, so I'm going to add our sales app in each case. Again, let's discover this one. We'll add that one in too. So you'll see between them, we've actually, now this I'm not claiming this is the most typical environment that you might have, but we've got some external dependencies which are not monitored. So I'm going to just remove those from the map for now. But what we've discovered actually is that these 3 web servers are talking via 3 different load balancers from actually 3 different vendors. So we are very heavily load balanced in our demo environment. So this is another Kemp load balancer. This one happens to be using, as I mentioned, there's 2 different management packs. This is using the other management pack. This one is is an F5 load balancer, op F5. You can see it there. And this one is now a Citrix NetScaler. CNS is the Citrix NetScaler load balancer. So if I just put in that these are my app load balancers now, and there's an amazingly smooth flow of traffic then through to our 2 application servers in this environment. So Apo1 and Apo2. So let's just quickly discover from those. And again, being very demanding, these app servers, they are actually talking to some external dependencies again, but they've also got a couple of databases, and you'll see this one we're going to discover. let's discover this one while we're at it as well. And so this one actually happens to be an Oracle database. If we expand that down, you can see a little bit. You can just tell from that this is actually running in Windows Azure. So that's an Oracle database on Windows, and this one is a SQL database. So you've seen in action there us discovering Oracle databases. You've seen us discovering through not just F5 but Kemp and Citrix NetScaler load balancers, and actually using two different ways of managing two different management packs on the Kemp load balancers as well. And maybe just to sort of give you an idea of what the finished product might look like. Here's one I prepared earlier. For any British people listening, from the fine tradition of Blue Peter. If you're not British, don't worry. We'll explain later. You can maybe you can ask Matthew on the chat what on earth I'm talking about.
I think it's of a certain age as well now.
Oh, actually, so yes, if you're under 45 and British, you might need to ask as well. All right, so here's one I prepared earlier, just to sort of show the sort of the view mode of the application discovery, and you can see actually in this case there's a couple of Kemp load balancers at the front, 3 web servers. In this case, there's only a couple of Kemp load balancer and a NetScaler load balancer, and then actually we've got in this case 3 different databases. That's because we can actually also discover Oracle on Linux as well, for example. So if I go through, you can see, just to give you that example, here is now us monitoring an Oracle database on a Linux computer, and that's through in that case, the NICE management pack. All right. So, Matthew, what did I forget to show of your fine work?
The discovery catalog.
Oh, yes, I did. I wanted to show that. You're quite right. Should we show the discovery catalog?
Yeah.
So if you go up into the system menu under EAM, you can now see all of the different discovery sources that we're using. Now, in this case, this is not maybe the best example because we've got them all, but hooray! So we've got everything we need. So these little green ticks are showing you that all of the things we think we could discover, we are able to discover. But if we thought you'd got, for example, Oracle databases and you didn't have the NICE management pack available, we would then point you to how you can get hold of that. And so you can actually, even the ones you've got installed already, you can expand at any point, and we give you the instructions on where to go to get hold of that management pack, and that applies to each of the different ones we talked about. So here's one of you'll see in fact I said there were 2 different community management packs. So there's one, and there's the other for Kemp. So 2 different ways you can do that. There it is for F5, and there's the instructions for Citrix NetScaler. All right, good catch. I did mean to show that, and I forgot. What else did I miss?
Well, we can't really show it, but the other piece is this flows through when you're doing discovery as well. So if when we run a discovery on a system, we detect that you're missing one of the MPs that would allow us to do more advanced discovery, we'll actually put a little message inside your VADA discovery session to say, hey, if you went and put this management pack in place, we could do more than we're currently showing. So again, like as this sort of ecosystem grows and we add more and more capabilities for component level discovery into VADA, you're sort of not left out from things that if you just imported an MP or clicked an install button, you actually get in the product. But because we have them all in this environment, you can't actually get that message to show up. But basically, it'll appear during discovery as it'll say add discovery or additional discovery, and you can click that to get details.
Fantastic. I should have mentioned, by the way, if you're watching all of this and you have no idea what this is and what VADA is and so on, this may be because you don't have the version of our product that has the full enterprise application functionality. So if that's the case, just drop us a mail, give us a call, and we'll explain to you how to get it. But yeah, this is really, really powerful stuff, letting you build maps of your applications. All right, so I think that's probably everything I wanted to do in terms of demo. Those of you who've hung on, hopefully this has been useful and you've learned some new stuff you can do. And hopefully some of you will be wondering, how can I get hold of version 4.3? Some of you may be wondering, he mentioned some news earlier. It's coming, don't worry. But first, how to get it? Well, it is available, especially just for all of you on this webinar. We have made it available earlier today, so you can actually go to our download site. Actually, if you go to Squared Up version 4, we'll take you to the most recent one being 4.3, which we added today. So it's available for you right now. We will send an email with additional details and webinar recording and so on shortly, so watch this space. It is fully supported in production, so you can put it into your production environment. It is an in-place upgrade, so we're not aware of any breaking changes. We've tested it very thoroughly, so it's ready for you to upgrade in your production environment. We will, as always, if you move on to the release candidate, we will prioritize support for you, because if in the unlikely event there is something, an issue with this release, we want to hear about it quickly, and we'll be very motivated to work with you if you are unlucky enough to discover one. And we will then, as you've seen in our sort of recent pattern, we'll continue with that pattern of then making a general availability version available late July, and that'll be a 4.3.1. Okay, so that'll come in the next sort of 3 weeks or so. So that's how to get hold of it. What about the news? Well, I've done this quickly. There may be a marketing person rushing across the office floor right now, ready to yank me away from this recording, because I probably shouldn't be telling you this yet. But I just for all of you on this webinar, we are about to announce publicly that we're going to be working on a new version of Squared Up for Microsoft Azure. If you're wondering, by the way, that is now the new. It appears to be the official logo for Microsoft Azure. They've sort of gone backwards to.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're not using the A anymore in any of their. It's still in the product, but in any of their sort of marketing collateral, they use that logo. So we're working on this product right now, and it's targeted for availability in kind of October, November timeframe. So that's what we're working towards in terms of a full public release. But we are looking for people to volunteer to work on a kind of pre-release version with us, to test out a pre-release version. That's one of the reasons we're doing the blog post tomorrow. So I'd encourage you all to watch our blog like hawks.
Keep hitting refresh.
Keep hitting refresh. It'll be there sometime tomorrow. And in the blog post, there's going to be a link to a survey. It's very short. It'll only take you a couple of minutes to fill in. But anyone who fills in that survey, we will then register to get hold of a little earlier than the full release, to get hold of a pre-release version, which we'd love you to play with, to put against your environments, and to give us feedback on. So it's pretty cool. It'll be very familiar to those of you who know Squared Up in many sort of familiar capabilities, but running natively against Microsoft Azure, using Azure Monitor and all of the other different sort of graph APIs that are available in Microsoft, as well as letting you pull in data from other applications like ServiceNow as well. So we're very excited about it. I'm really tempted to say even more, but I think I'd better not. All right, so watch out for the blog post tomorrow. Thank you so much. This just sort of leaves us with Q&A. So Matthew, I think, has been watching like a hawk in case there are any questions that have come in live.
Yep.
And if not, don't worry, you can always email them to us afterwards. I'm going to be very brave and tell you my email address. It's not going to be very mysterious for people who know the format of our email addresses. It's john.shaw, so john.shaw@squaredup.com. I'd love to hear from any of you afterwards. But Matthew, do we have any questions right now?
There's a few coming just literally this second. So rather than typing them, I'll answer them on air. So one person's asked, if they're on V3 currently, how do they upgrade to 4.3? Our upgrade path will let you go from, I think it's 3.2 or 3.1, one of those two, straight to any version of V4. So you don't have to go from V3 to 4.0 to 4.3. That said, we do recommend that you do a side-by-side installation. And if you go on to our KB, our knowledge base, there's an article that walks you through doing a V3 migration. And everything that's written there already applies to 4.3. Just download the 4.3 installer and sort of go through that.
I'm very glad you said that. Definitely read the knowledge base first.
Yes.
I mean, there are some noticeable feature differences between 3 and 4. So the upgrade works, but you should be aware of those changes before you do an in-place upgrade. So
yes.
Side by side is definitely a best practice.
Do side by side and do read the sort of the licensing points, because obviously you can't run version 3 and version 4 together indefinitely. So one of the things we do recommend is you can have a sort of trial period of V4 to make sure everything upgrades okay, but don't embark down this road if you're not planning on upgrading for 6 to 8 months, because you might find yourself in violation of the EULA. So yeah, go read that article, and that'll give you all the information you need to plan your upgrade.
Yeah, read the article, and if in doubt, do contact our support team. They're very helpful. All right. Any other questions, Matthew? I know that Matthew's been busy typing some on the chat while we've been going.
So yes, an upgrade from 3.4 to 4.3 is supported, so you're all good there. And someone asks for the new squared up for Azure, is it going to integrate with SCOM, or is it going to be sort of its own separate product kind of thing? I think we will defer that for read the blog post tomorrow. I think we're already in trouble enough as it is with stealing their thunder.
Oh, I want to answer. Okay.
I mean, you're the chief product officer. Go for it if you want to.
So the initially it will run separately. But we are working on some ways in which you can put SCOM and Azure together. Okay. Any other questions, Matthew?
I think the others are quite specific, so I'll answer them in chat.
Very good. All right. So so Matthew may stay on the chat for a little bit and answer any directly with you. If you have other questions that occur to you afterwards, or that you weren't brave enough to answer in front of everyone else, ask in front of everyone else on the webinar, then do email me, john.shaw@squaredup.com. Or of course, if you have support questions, don't hesitate to get in contact with our support team. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today, and good luck installing and playing with version 4.3, and looking forward to speaking to you again very soon. Thank you.